What's up, everybody? Welcome in to another pregame edition of SSPN Live. I'm Jude, that's Ethan, and we're here to talk some Spurs.
You're right, Jude. You're absolutely right. We are.
I should have given you a little bit more of an indication that I was kind of dishing it to you there. But 1-2 over the weekend. More importantly, Ethan, we
Mm.
went into this weekend and we said that the Spurs may have a chance to go 2-1. And while they didn't go 2-1, Ethan,
Mm.
we weren't technically wrong there either, because two of the games, Ethan, were decided by 2 points. So the Spurs were very competitive in the Friday matchup against the Grizzlies, which we'll get into here in a second. Lost by just 2 points on a very rough last possession that I watched the highlights of earlier. It wasn't very rough. It was just Jaren Jackson Jr. was matched up against Jeremy Sohan. And most matchups where Jeremy's guarding somebody, like, I'm going to be happy with that on the last possession. But in this one, when you have Wemby matched up, it was somebody smaller than Jaren Jackson Jr. I would have liked to see Wemby guard him on that last possession, especially when Trey Jones hit a three to tie the game. And I think they were down like 8 or 6. I just watched the highlights, so because I was working on Friday night, so I wasn't able to see it full time. But basically, they made like a 6 or 8 point run to come back and tie the game. And so to see Jaren Jackson kind of bully ball and just use his size advantage on Jeremy Sohan on the last possession, it wasn't even bad defense by Jeremy. He's just not as big as Jaren
Right.
Jackson Jr. That was a tough one to swallow. But with all of that being said, Ethan ended up pulling out the win 104-102 in the second matchup against the Suns on Monday. So two very close competitive games there, Ethan. I remember you saying when we previewed this weekend, you said, I think the Spurs might have a chance to go 2-1. And you weren't wrong there, even though they went 1-2. And we're probably not going to touch too much on the Saturday game against the Suns, not even because we're trying to ignore it, but the Spurs just got blown out, as they should, against a
Mm-hmm.
team that's competing for a playoff spot in the West right now, and the Spurs are in last place in the West. But the great news for the Spurs is, with Wemby out in that Monday game, they found a way to win. Jeremy Sohan had a career high in rebounds, one of his better performances of his career. And really, just to see the guys get another win, without Wemby was really good to see them showcase some of the stuff they did and just see them step up to the plate in his absence against a team that's literally fighting for a playoff spot right now. I know I kind of went all over the place there, Ethan,
Oh,
and
you're good.
recap both games, but those are my thoughts on the two competitive games this weekend for San Antonio.
Yeah, just to touch on that Grizzlies game, I didn't get to watch it live. I saw a couple highlight reels, a couple recaps, but I think we can chalk it up to we shot 18% from three, where they shot 35% from three. If we just have an average night shooting, we probably win this game. And just to, I guess, point our finger at somebody, the bench played very poorly. Keldon had 8 points on 2 of 9 shooting, didn't hit a single three. And then the only other two bench players to score were Zach with 4 points and Malachi Branham with 4 points, who also shot 2 of 7 from the field. So just a rough night shooting. I think on any other given night we win that game. Still no excuse. You should be more focused than that, be able to hit those threes, especially at home. But I was still happy with the way that we competed despite that big deficiency from 3 point land. But yeah, just kind of edging over that complete blowout on Saturday night. The 104-102 win. I didn't get to watch the first 3 quarters. I just finished watching the highlights a little while ago, but I did catch like the last 5 minutes of the game. And I think you're right. Jeremy Sohan needs his props, not only for what he did rebounding wise, career high 18 points, as well as a scorer with 26, but what he was able to do defensively on Kevin Durant. I know Kevin Durant still had 29 points on pretty efficient shooting, 12 for 17 from the field, but coming down the stretch, there were a couple key possessions where he forced the ball out of KD's hand. He was a nuisance, and he never really gave up. And he also had moments where he was guarding Devin Booker, being that versatile Swiss Army knife that we know he's capable of on the defensive side of the court. For him to have the energy to do both, and then have the poise to hit the game winner at the end after missing his first 6 threes, that's the big story for me. That he can shoot that poorly to start the game, still have the confidence level. Despite Kevin Durant having 29, still not faltering on that side of the court and being the MVP without having Wembanyama to lean on. But at the same time, giving him his flowers, Devin Vassell deserves a lot of praise as well, who also had 26 points, 11 for 24 shooting, and took some big baskets as well. And getting better as a drive and drop-off playmaker, Jude. He found a lot of guys underneath the hoop. Zach Collins, your boy Dominic Barlow, whoever it may be. Dominic actually missed his one field goal. So
he had a 3 that they took away from him. They totally rigged it. It was a complete sham, and I'm just disgusted by the officiating.
Well, I'm sorry, Jude, but
For those of y'all who watched that game, y'all know what I'm talking about. Dom Beasy hit a 3. I even texted Ethan about it, and then they're like, "Oh, he barely touched out of bounds. We're gonna take it away."
You did.
We should have won 107 to 102. Anyways,
you're right. You're right. Absolutely right. But I just love the way we competed. And we shot 26% from 3 in that game, but we still found a way to win. Great energy plays, great ball movement, great team chemistry without our best player. So for everyone out there that's saying the Spurs, the team itself is trash around Wemby, clearly they are wrong. There are pieces here that we still have time to develop. Devin Vassell being one, Jeremy Sohan, of course. Malachi Branham also. Oh, no, he had 0 points. Excuse me, I'm looking at Keldon Johnson, who had 14 points. So an excellent win. Glad we were able to get at least one over the weekend. And just before I finish up, Jude, one last point for you.
Go for it.
About Saturday's game. Did you watch the game, Jude?
I did not.
You need to go back and watch.
I was watching the UFC. I was being bad.
I watched the highlights, and the only thing I'm going to say about it, Drew Eubanks put Dominic Barlow on a poster.
Did he really?
He did. I'm not even lying. It's not even like he brushed him kind of thing. It's a full contact, face-to-face, just like put it on his head. And then it was so hard that Drew fell to the ground afterwards. And laying on the ground on his back, he started screaming because it was in San Antonio. And I was like, yeah, Drew. Yeah, Drew. So I won't talk about it anymore, but I just wanted you to be aware of that fact.
No, thank you for making me aware of that fact, because I didn't even realize Barlow played Saturday, to be completely honest with you. That will prove that I really was not paying attention to this game. And once I kind of saw the score being the way it was early in the game, I was like, okay, this was a good decision to not tune into this. And I never did. But there you go, Ethan. There you go. That is a big W for Drew over Dom Barlow in that game. But I will say, Ethan, in that next game, not only was Barlow screwed out of that 3, in my opinion, but Eubanks,
he didn't play well.
He wasn't the same guy. He wasn't poster Eubanks anymore.
No, he was not.
I got the Popeyes ad in my ear as I said that, so I couldn't. What's the word? Focus. It was hard. Yes, exactly. I couldn't articulate with all of the noise in my ears. But all things considered, Ethan, that's a pretty, when I texted you and I was like, our boys are going at it, Dom versus Drew on Monday, I was completely oblivious to the fact that they had already done so on Saturday. And Drew got the best of him, but I guess that's why he's still I've got a signed poster of him on my wall, Ethan.
The goat for real.
If there's a way that the Spurs could ever get Eubanks back in some capacity, I would always welcome it.
That Eubanks Barlow front court off the bench would be crazy.
Imagine they go from rivals to teammates.
I wish.
the front court off the bench of the future, Ethan.
I think so. Honestly, move over Wemby and X player. It's or Jeremy Sohan, I suppose. It is the Barlow and Drew Eubanks show, 1000%.
Oh my gosh, I completely agree. But just to get back to some of these games here, Ethan, just to touch on the Grizzlies game a little bit, I thought the point that you made about the bench specifically was a really good point, because Jake LaRavia had 15 and Scottie Pippen Jr. had 18. And if Scottie Pippen Jr. doesn't miss 4 free throws, I mean, that's 22.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when I was watching the highlights earlier today, Ethan, 4 steals for Scottie Pippen Jr. too. He was showing up a lot
Mm-hmm.
on the highlights, and I was like, wow, this seems like our bench defense, and our bench did not play good in this game, which is 100% facts. Looking at the box score here, Keldon was the leading scorer, and he shot 2 for 9, 0 for 4 from three. So
Mm-hmm.
just a rough game overall for basically everybody except for Victor, Trey Jones, and Devin Vassell in this
Mm-hmm.
one. So the fact that we were able to be competitive, honestly, Ethan, with
Mm-hmm.
only those 3 players playing well, like literally everybody else shot bad, other than I guess you could say Zach, but still he fouled out and only had 4 and 4. So I think that not only is it just the shooting point that you mentioned, but also the bench really had a rough night. Um, and when you have a competitive game like that, that's tough for the bench to have a rough night.
Mm.
But going back to more of the good stuff, Ethan. Here, did I interrupt you there?
Nope, you did not.
Um, let's talk about this win here against Phoenix on Monday. Devin Booker still got his
Mm-hmm.
36, 6 and 4. KD really still got his too, 29, 8 and 6. But here's the thing. Okay, you let Royce O'Neal have 12 points. Half of those are from threes, and then you gave him some buckets inside. But otherwise, Bradley Beal was the next leading scorer at 9 points, 4 for 11, 1 for 4. And really everybody else on the entire roster shot poorly.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, Eubanks filled up the stat sheet the most, other than, well, you could maybe say Nurkic a little bit, but on the bench at least, aside from scoring, he was really the only one who made an impact.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, Grayson Allen, Bradley Beal, Eric Gordon, kind of a rough game from all of those guys.
You know what's crazy? If we don't have a bad second quarter, this is like a sizable Spurs win. Not sizable, but like a comfortable win. And just because they went on a 28-18, not run, but we got outscored by 10 in that second quarter, and it was really an all Phoenix highlight reel in that second quarter. We had to kind of
Mm-hmm.
fight and claw our way back. I think we got down by what was it, 10 or 11 at one point, um, to finally go
They
on that
won the
run in the
second
fourth
quarter
quarter.
by 10.
Let me look at the biggest lead here. Team stats. Yeah, we were down by 11 at one point. Or no, down by 9. We were up by 11 at one point. So we had to battle through a lot of diversity in this game. So it shows a lot of growth. I think that we were able to actually come back and win again. Emphasize on the fact that we did not have
Mm-hmm.
Victor Wembanyama, and the defensive game plan, like you said. Let's let Kevin Durant and Devin Booker do what they do. That's fine, but let's not let anybody else get going. I think that's how they killed us in that first game. Is everybody got hot, so there was no stop. There was no way we could put a plunger in that drain. Like it was just going. Um, so if we can limit the rest of the guys, then that's going to be Phoenix's um, Achilles heel come playoff time. Is do they have enough bench and depth scoring when their big three isn't able to single handedly win games for them?
Yeah, or you're able to shut down Bradley Beal
Mm-hmm.
somehow, because I know it's just one game, but if we can do it,
Somebody can.
yeah,
A good
right,
defensive team
exactly.
can.
Right, exactly,
Mm.
exactly. Because remember, this is without Victor on the
Which I
floor.
think is what we were like the worst defensive efficiency rating in the league without
Yeah.
Victor Wembanyama on the floor. So we're making strides, Jude. We're making strides.
Lots of intensity and effort from the guys in this one. And the thing that's different about this one in comparison to the Memphis game is that while Jeremy and Devin both had really well, the Memphis game, that was Devin and Victor. But for all things considered here, Ethan, uh, Jeremy Sohan essentially kind of replaced a lot of the shots and especially the
Mm-hmm.
boards that Victor took. But the point I'm trying to get to is Jeremy having 26 and Devin having 26 in this game wasn't going to be
Mm-hmm.
enough. You had 18 from Zach, 5 and 3 as well with the steal. This is one of his better offensive games of the season, at least shooting wise overall. I know still 0 for 3 from 3, but a lot of mid range jumpers. And him being on, if you will, making the defense respect him in this game opened up looks for other guys as well. And you mentioned the 3-point shooting here,
Mm-hmm.
Ethan. Really, if you look at the numbers, The only bad 3-point shooting was from the starters, which is another huge difference from that
Mm-hmm.
Memphis game. The bench showed up in this one. I know Keldon, if you look at the box score, it doesn't look like a crazy, stat line. I watched this game. This was one of, like, I don't want to make this hyperbole, but this was a really good
Mm.
game from him. Like, and when you consider his 6-man role, you don't really want him to do too much. 5 for 9 overall, 14 points. The 2 threes he hit, I believe, were both in the third quarter, and they were very timely. And when you look at the third quarter, we won by 4 points. So if he doesn't hit both of those threes, we don't win that quarter. And maybe you could even lose the game. There was one that was just like a pull up late in the shot clock, and then there was another one that was a catch and shoot, but those were very timely. And then the 5 assists from
Mm.
him as well. I'm not sure how many of those were threes, but just for the sake of conversation, we'll just say they're all twos. Add 10 points to that. That's 24 points accounted for Keldon off the bench. And then Shetty, this is the type, as much as this is just, not a crazy box score again, this is the type of game that you want from Shetty. A steal, 2 boards, and then just being efficient from three, hitting 2 threes. Blake Wesley, not the best game, shooting wise, but really, other than that, he still went 1 for 2 from three as
Mm-hmm.
well. So the 3-point shooting was solid, and really just overall, even though like you look at Barlow, it's not going to look like much, but +6 in the box score as well. Didn't make too many mistakes. Definitely, I think after you told me the information that you did, I think played much better against Eubanks in this game, at least matching up like
Mm-hmm.
physically. And once again, with Wemby's, as much as you look at this box score and it's 0 for 1 with 3 rebounds, I'm just saying the 18 minutes that he played, like it could be worse, is what I'm trying to say, with Wemby
For
out.
sure, for sure. And the only thing I'm going to touch on there is Blake's game. Defensively, he was playing very, very well. So I know he only had 5 points, 3 assists, but defensively, he was really locking up those bench guards. And he had a timely steal that coincided with a timely steal from Devin, where Devin picked Kevin Durant's pocket, took it coast to coast. Right after that, Blake did the same thing, had another slam. So he had plays that led to momentum that we went on a run and were able to kind of come back as we went into the fourth quarter and have a little bit of energy on our sides.
Yeah, there's a reason that he's the highest plus minus in the box score, despite not having the craziest shooting night, and that's just a testament to the defensive impact that he's been making really over the past couple weeks. But yeah, man, solid game overall. And even Champagny, like I know that's nothing crazy, but all you really want from, well, I was going to say, I assume those were 2 threes, but I guess he had 2 and 1s.
Huh. Or he hit 2 layups and a free throw,
Yeah,
a couple free throws.
you're right. I'm sure that's what it was. I don't know why I was assuming that, but still not a bad. You got 6 points from Champagny, and looking at the final score of this one, it's actually something you needed.
For sure, for sure. I'm surprised Trey Jones did not have a very good game.
That's misleading too. Even the plus minus there, I know I just talked about how it does tie into Blake. I would say in this game, because I watched this one, Trey didn't have a bad game. He just wasn't really able to like do impact too much offensively, I
Mm.
guess you could say. Had a steal, 4 assists. I think, like you said, you talked about Devin's playmaking taking a jump. This is another 7 assist game for him. We saw an 8 assist game from him a little while back. I would say that has, and Keldon as well. Devin and Keldon playmaking in this one has more to do with Trey's numbers not looking that crazy. But this wasn't, kind of like Barlow, it wasn't a bad game from him. It just kind of, other guys were
Mhm.
going off. So he just kind of was like, okay, I'm going to just play within the flow here and not try to do too
Okay,
much.
that makes sense.
Yeah. I didn't see, like, when I look back on that game, I'm not remembering anything like crazy, drastic bad from Trey. And he had no turnovers. So that lines
True,
up.
true.
But we got a question here, Ethan, from Doria
Mm.
the Exploria. Did you see that Keldon is out and CD was called up? Are we about to see CD minutes? This is a great question, Ethan, because the other thing we're going to do here tonight is preview the game that's about to be on here in about 40 minutes against the Utah Jazz. And CD Sissoko was called up. I did not see that Keldon was out. I'm going to go double check. Well, here, let me pull it up on ESPN. I was about to go to Paul Garcia on Twitter, but let's just go ahead and look at the injury report for this
I
one.
think he's a game time decision. I don't know what the prognosis is. I don't know what's hurt on him, but
I knew he was questionable. Him and Wemby were questionable, and they both participated in shoot around. I sent that
Yes.
to you earlier today. What am I doing? I'm doing this again, Ethan. My bad. I'm clicking on the teams instead of the time, which leads me to the actual game. And look
He
at
is
this,
out.
Ethan. Keldon Johnson is out. And this is a really good point because we've been waiting to potentially see some CD Sissoko minutes. He just had 22 in last night,
Mm.
actually, in Utah against the Salt Lake City Stars for the Austin Spurs G League team. An unfortunate loss. Both 18 and 13 going into that game. So it was a G League playoff
Mm.
race, Ethan. So even though it was a tough loss, it's a good
Yeah.
team.
Yeah. True. That's the biggest tragedy.
No, but in all seriousness, well, look, Jordan Clarkson and Chris Dunn out. That's actually going to help us. I mean, not completely fix
Whew.
everything, but okay. But
Yeah, you're
Jordan
right about
Clarkson
Jordan Clarkson.
Chris Dunn. Okay, we're not going to see a Jeremy fight, but Jordan Clarkson can give you 20 some nights. But still, yeah, you're still gonna have to deal with Walker Kessler, Laurie Markin, and all that stuff. But Wemby not being on the injury report definitely makes a
Mm.
huge impact when it comes to dealing with those two. Um, but man, I would really love to see some CD Sissoko minutes. I think he's been progressing really well. We kind of teased it going into the post All-Star break, kind of around this time of year. Only got about less than a month left in the season here, maybe like 3 weeks,
Mm.
really. If we want to get specific, I would love to see some CD Sissoko minutes just on the NBA team, just on the bench. And I think this would be a great night with Keldon out to see him get some run.
Agreed. I think what's he averaging right now? 20 points a game in the G League, something like that.
Let's go ahead and check.
And Utah, they're a big team. They're long. I mean, Laurie Markkinen plays the three. They have Taylor Hendricks, John Collins at that starting front court with Walker Kessler off the
Mm-hmm.
bench. So your boy CD Sissoko being the physical, athletic presence that he is, maybe he's able to make an impact defensively at the very least, and show us some things that he's able to do offensively, translatable, just mainly not make mistakes, play within the flow of the offense. That's what I'm hoping to see from him. I don't envision a
Mm-hmm.
crazy, goes off, shooting the ball, but be at the right place at the right time, run the floor, and get easy baskets. I think that's something that you can expect from him for sure.
Yeah, I just want to see him go in there, make energy
Hmm.
plays, play hard on defense, distribute. If you get an open shot, take it. But like you said, overall, not trying to do too
Mm.
much. I'm still trying to get to his overall stats on the season here. Finally, able to get
I saw
through.
something that was like 19.9 per game, but I don't know if that was like last 10 games type stat or hit the full G League season. I'm not sure which.
Well, here I go to their roster, and they're not even. They don't have him on the roster, Ethan, because he's technically on an NBA
Of course.
contract. So this is just. I can't believe they're doing this to me. But you know what's something I have noticed about the Austin Spurs, Ethan, that I didn't
Hmm.
realize? Charles Bediako is still on the team. I thought when we cut him, like we cut him in general, but he's like Serge Abari Rice and did survive. He's been getting like
Hmm.
1 to 2 minutes.
Well, there you go.
So big impact. Shout out to
Shout
Charles
out to
though.
Charles, indeed.
I wish I could find those stats for you, Ethan, but they're not even on. He's not even on the roster, and I
It's
just
all
went
good. I think what we can, at the minimum, expect from CD Sissoko is that if he does get meaningful minutes, he will play better than his 23-24 season averages, which right now are 1 point per game, 1 rebound per game on 16% shooting from the field. I think that's only in like two
there.
games played total, but still.
Uh
Or
huh.
no, it's in six, actually.
Well, what I can do is I can pull up his stats from last night. I know his shooting is a topic of conversation that people have talked about, but I want him to
Me
keep
too.
shooting. I know 2 for 7 isn't the greatest, but I'm glad that he's continuing to shoot in these games because that's something that you want him to add to his skill set. But more importantly, 22 points last night. He's been hovering around the 20-point mark for a while in the G League. And just to update the people on some of our other two-way guys, even in a 5-point loss last night, Raekwon Gray, 10 of 18, 2 for 5 from 3, had 12 assists,
Mm.
Ethan. And this is when I talk about him potential, having potential to put the ball on the floor, even being like they list him at like 270. I think he might have dropped a little bit of that, but still he's like 250 plus. That's what I mean. Like he may have the potential to play the four. He can stretch the floor a little bit and can distribute as well. 6 boards also. David Duke Jr. has really been on a tear as well. 24, 8 of 14 overall, 3 for 6 from 3, 9 boards, 4 assists, a steal and a block. And Jabari Booyah, he's had some other better games scoring wise recently, but still one thing that I've noticed in all of his games, Ethan, 6 boards, 7 assists, a steal, 2 blocks. He always fills up the rest of the stat sheet. And the other thing that we've talked about a little bit before here, and we'll get to some of the comments after this, is that he was kind of leading that Sioux Falls team, the Heat's affiliate, before we signed him, where he was like taking most of the shots. There were some other good guys on there that had some big games, now that I'm thinking about it, because they actually had Justin Champagnie and Alondas Williams. But in a lot of the games that he was out, or that those guys were out, Jamari was taking most of the shots, where now he's kind of having to come in and adjust to like sharing shots with CD, David Duke, and Raekwon, where all those guys have been on the team all year, regardless of whether or not they've been on a two-way. And our boy Paul Watson, I can't forget him, Ethan. He had 44 earlier this year, so he gets some shots up too.
The GOAT, no doubt.
What are your thoughts? I know you probably don't have too much to take away from these guys, but what are your thoughts on just the two-way guys and what you've seen from them just since the new signings that we've had?
They're scoring. I take very little from the Austin Spurs.
As you should.
Like CD Sissoko is a different story because he's a guy that we drafted in the second round, signed to a full contract, and is 19 with all kinds of upside. But everybody else, I take it kind of with a grain of salt. Booyah is a little different for me because of the amount of steals he's able to rack up. He had that 9 steal game, I'm pretty sure, right? And also, like you said, fills up the stat sheet in other areas. But I haven't watched any of these games personally, so I would feel like I'm lying to people if I gave any more than that.
I gotcha. What I will say is David Duke Jr. has consistently been scoring around 20. He really he plays point guard really, as much as Jamari is kind of listed as that. David Duke's usually taking it up. And just with the way that we've utilized him since we signed him, and that he's a former Delaware Blue Coat, we know how that turns out for a lot of those guys. We have 2 of them on our team on contract right now. I think he's just somebody that I really have my radar on next year for maybe like the 3rd string shooting guard spot. Okay. I think he could potentially, really earn a roster spot. But also, I wouldn't be completely surprised if he's back on a 2-way as well, just like we signed Jamari too. The main thing I would say about these guys is your point is I'm bringing this up just because it's something for us to talk about. But like Kenny Lofton Jr. just gave the G League Ignite like 53, 16, and 3. And we know that Kenny, like as much as like Kenny Lofton one day may be a solid rotation player in the league, but like Kenny Lofton's not going to be an all-star. You know what I mean? So when you say that you take very little away from the G League, I think that's a very, what's the word? Just a good thing to do, because like there will be people like that who will randomly just, have crazy games when it's not necessarily indicative of, that translating to the league.
I mean, Isaiah Thomas was averaging 25, right, in the G League. You've got Kenneth Faried going prime manimal on these 20-year-old kids. Like it's, it is what it is. But I mean, like you said, there's still something you can take away from him. And we've seen guys become quality role players on the team, like Mamu, like Julian Champagnie, Drew Eubanks, and then other guys that have really exploded. Derek White came from the G League as well. DeJounte had played a little bit in the G League. So like it's a fair point to say that they could play down the road on the roster.
Yeah, Charles Bassey as well, another Delaware Blue Coat who earned a 4-year contract with the Spurs. But enough of the Austin Spurs, Ethan. Let's get to some of these comments here, and then we can kind of dive a little bit deeper into maybe some keys to this Utah Jazz game tonight. But Victor in the comments says, I have a question. If the draft was tonight and we were deciding between Topic, he means Nikola Topic, from the Serbian league, point guard prospect in this draft, and Zakari Risacher, I'm probably butchering his last name, but I tried to be as French as possible there. Who would you want and why? And I know, Ethan, you may not have been able to dive into the tape on really either of these guys. And to be honest with you, I haven't done a super deep dive on either of them either. But what I will say, with Victor's recent comments that I saw on Zachary, and also just a lot of the other kind of mock draft and scouting talk out there, Zachary Rasache, or Rasasher, I'm sorry if I'm butchering it again. It seems like there's a lot of talk about him potentially being like the unanimous consensus number one overall player, even like over Alex Sarr. Regardless, it seems like those guys are like for sure 1 and 2. And as much as the Spurs need a point guard, the other thing that I was about to get into is Wemby spoke very highly of Zachary, and he's playing in the same league in the LNB that Wemby played in as well. So just for the fact that Wemby was like very complimentary of him, y'all can go. I forget exactly what interview it was on, but I saw it on Twitter from one of the Spurs reporters, whether it's Jeff McDonald, Paul Garcia, Tom Orsborn, or Mike Finger. Y'all can go check all of those if y'all really want to fact check me. But I know them off the top of my head. But it was one of their tweets, and Victor was talking about how he was just like super complimentary of him, kind of like over the top complimentary. I think basically, without saying it, and maybe I'm wrong here, he was kind of saying like, I'd love if we could get him if we have the opportunity. You know, he's a really good shooter. That's the other thing too. He is like a bona fide shooter, and there's a lot of potential in a lot of other places. He's around 6'8", so he is a wing, but one of the woes this year for the Spurs, specifically kind of around Wemby in a lot of games, go back to the Rockets game a couple weeks ago where they just clogged the paint and forced Trey and Jeremy to shoot. Like, he would be someone who, guaranteed would come in and be able to do that. And I also think that, bluntly, I mean, who knows with some of these guys, but I think with what the scouts are saying and whatnot, it seems like he has a little bit of a higher ceiling than Topic. So to answer your question, I would say Zachary.
Well, you're right. I haven't looked at Rishacher, or however you say his last name. I have seen some Topic highlights, and I know why he's so highly regarded, especially since we need a point guard, like you were saying, Jude. But if what you're saying about Rishacher is true, again, without looking at it for myself, I might lean toward that as well for two reasons. One, we got to keep Wemby happy, and if that's who Wemby wants, I have no problem taking him, especially if the difference between the two is like neck and neck, like can't go wrong either way. Let's take him. And then two, like you could say our number one need is point guard, but if you look at our starting lineup, the weakest position is probably small forward with Julian Champagny. So if you're telling me we're just replacing Julian with this Versace guy who's a knockdown shooter with unbelievable potential, regarded as a top 3 consensus pick, right? I'm with it. Let's give Trey another run at starting point guard and run it back.
Dude, I forget about Champagny
Yeah.
sometimes. Like, even though he's a starter, like when you're saying that, I'm like, I haven't seen too much of this kid. I've just seen bits and pieces of highlights, but I think he would be a massive upgrade over Champagny.
Yeah, right? It sounds
and he's a sniper already. So like, it's like he would come in and already do what Champagny can do. I mean, the NBA is a little different, but I feel very confident he would come in at least as a knockdown shooter. And then when you're able to, actually develop, he would have such a higher ceiling in so many other different areas, in comparison to old Julian.
And then that would basically relegate Julian to the third string small forward, Keldon off the bench still.
Well, with Shetty out, I mean, maybe Julian plays. The other thing is Julian's 6'9". And we talked about maybe, the potential of Keldon even playing the 4 against some teams next year off the bench, I think in our last episode. Now, obviously, that would have to be against certain matchups because sometimes there's just going to be a height disadvantage. But usually that's not as much the case on the bench. But regardless, you could even make the argument that you're playing Champagny there with him being listed at 6'9" coming into this season.
Fair.
So I'm not saying that Champagny's going to come in off the bench and be the answer at the 4.
Champagny can just be the guy. Anywhere we have a hole, we'll just play him.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, Champagny could be the backup 2 through 4, and it would be like, I'm not saying it's going to be the max potential of the Spurs under Victor, But, going into next season, maybe that could even be a thing. But like you also said, he could easily just be relegated to a third string guy, and I'd be very happy with that. He's only getting paid like
Yeah.
2 mil for the next 3 years. So that could totally work. Kind of him and Bassey are kind of in that same realm, if you will.
Absolutely.
But let's get to some other questions here, Ethan. Second question, I know his floor spacing isn't the greatest, but his shooting percentage is increasing little by little. Would you say trading for Josh Giddey cheaper than Trae Young? I mean, I would rather go for somebody a little bit more proven than Josh Giddey. Like if we're gonna make a move, I'd rather go with something just more splashy. Like, and when I say splashy, I know in the last episode where we talked about this, I said it doesn't have to be like super splashy, but I don't know like how much better Josh Giddey makes us. You know what I mean? Like what what does he do that Trey Jones doesn't? And maybe I'm just ignorant there, Ethan, but is there anything that's like, I know he's bigger than him. He's probably maybe a little bit better of a defender, maybe.
That's a fair point. I mean, it depends on how much we'd have to give up, right? Like
That's
if
true.
you're telling me it's gonna be, I'm just gonna pick a name. Let's say Malachi Branham and like a first, and that's it. I think about it because
I
I
wouldn't be
wouldn't be
mad at
mad.
that.
Like I love Malachi, but they're like what? Are they the same age? Maybe even Malachi
They're
about the
around the
same
same age.
age. We've talked about how point guard's kind of a need for us, and maybe it would relegate Blake probably to the third string spot. But like you said, he's taller than Trey. I don't know. I think that's a great point, Jude. What does he do that Trey Jones doesn't? Because he's flashier than Jude. Not Jude. He's flashier than Trey as far as being a playmaker. Like, and he is 6'8". I get that, and maybe a bit better of a defender. But he's not a crazy athlete. He's not a crazy scorer. I don't know. It's a good question, but again, it would come back to how much are we giving up?
Yeah, when you bring up like that example, and I hate to just like single out one of the players, but I wouldn't be mad at that because I do feel like at this point I've seen more from Josh Giddey than I've seen from
Right.
Malachi. But like that's a super specific like
Yeah.
trade that we're like it is Sam Presti.
I don't think
Would he even
so.
agree to that? I don't think he would either. Yeah, I think he would want more. So and even if like we don't offer him, there's not an offer that we like. There could be a better offer out there if they're really looking for, moving him. But this is also just a completely
Yeah.
hypothetical scenario by our
Now,
man
now that
Victor.
I'm thinking
So
about it,
I don't even know if Josh Giddey's on the trade block.
he
Probably
he
not.
might be sort of kinda only because they're gonna have to pay everybody and they have Shea
Right.
and floor spacing, like he said. But I think if they're gonna trade him, they'll probably want like a quality big, like a physical big, because that's the only piece of their team that they're really missing is like an Andre Drummond type center that can get you a bunch of rebounds and just beat down Jokic if that's what it came to in the playoffs.
Well, that they got Alexander Sarr's little brother or
Mm,
older brother, excuse me, in the G League. I sent you that earlier today. He got 26
right,
boards.
right. He did.
Once again, G League not indicative.
I mean, that could be a different story because how old is that guy?
He's pretty young, but he's also
Okay.
6'10". Not to say that he's super undersized, but I don't see him backing down Jokic, like
Yeah.
you were saying. And he's still, even though he had 26 boards, I have watched him play because there was like a 2-game series that the Spurs played against the OKC
Mhm.
Blue, and I was like, oh my god, this is Alex Sarr's older brother. I was like, of course Sam Presti picked him up. I believe he's on a 2-way for him actually, even though he's playing in the G League right now. He's more of he's actually similar to his brother. He's not like the biggest, like,
Right.
strength guy. He kind of outlengths people, uses some finesse. I mean, he can get some good blocks and be physical, but that's not like, he once again, you're talking about like matching up with like a Jokic or
That's not
something
his
that would,
special.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
not him.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Um, Let's see some other questions that we got here. Swatcho Bros says, I'm leaning towards a Rob Dillingham, Matas Buzelis draft if we get both picks, and Risache if it ends up being the top pick. So that's some interesting points there. I would really love to get this Raptors pick, Ethan, but I think it's dwindling day by day. I saw that one of their other Jonte Porter was out because he's being investigated for potentially making his friends money on some
Right.
prop bets. um, but like he was actually like a rotation player for them, so it's like they're just. And then on top of that, Scotty Barnes is out for the year,
Mhm.
right? Did I hear
I
that
think
correctly?
Quickly and RJ Barrett are coming back though. But I'm still with
It
you
will
though.
depend on the
I'm
lottery
still
too.
with you though. I don't think we're gonna get that pick. I think it's kind of out of the question at this point.
I really would like it. And with the lottery, there is always like that
Yeah.
chance, but I'm not betting on it at this point. But I would love that. I would like Rob Dillingham and Buzelis. Um, I honestly like we were talking about Nikola Topic earlier. I mean, all of these guys in the top 10, I'm probably going to be optimistic
Hmm.
about, just to be honest with you. But I like that pairing there for sure. I think Buzelis, he's somebody he's really got better as the season's gone on for Ignite, even though the team is 2
Hmm.
and 30. And he's been really having to carry since Ron Holland went down a couple months ago. But he's really showed his versatility. I kind of viewed him as more of a 4 coming into the year. And he definitely still has the size to play that, but he's somebody who can put the ball on the floor and play the 3 if we want. So that could kind of answer that Champagny question. And then also Rob Dillingham answers the point guard question. I really like a lot of the stuff that I saw from Rob Dillingham. I know he's still got some honing to
Hmm.
do. Like if you look at that March Madness game where Kentucky lost to Oakland, they were the victims of the upset this year, or one of the upsets in March Madness. There were maybe some ill-advised shots from a young player. There were some overtime elite shots, dare
Hmm.
I say, Ethan, from Rob Dillingham in that game. But I think that's more about him and his teammates all being 18, and playing a team full of 23-year-olds. And that's a lot of things that's why there's so many upsets that happen in March Madness, because a lot of these top-rated teams, are a bunch of super young players, and then they go up against some team that's been playing together for like 4 years, and they beat them in skill, not in skill and scheme, not talent, you know. Um, so I like Rob Dillingham a lot. I like his off the dribble ability. You could say that there's maybe you'd like to see a little bit more playmaking, but the thing is, like, playmaking and defense are maybe like the two things you could pick at, and those are the two things that the Spurs are like, that those are probably their two strengths,
Hmm.
the highest strengths when it comes to development. So the fact that I would love to see him in the 2-man game with Wemby. He would be another person who could just go get a bucket off the dribble. And if you were able to pair that with Buzelas, I think that's just a major upgrade over
Hmm.
Champagny.
I'll take your word for it. I've given no research into either of those players. The only thing I know about Montas is that he goes high in 2K. That is about it.
I love it. But with all that being said, Ethan, we talked a little bit of
Hmm.
draft there. Let's talk about the game tonight here, as we're just about 15 minutes from tip against the Jazz. What are your keys to the game with Keldon Johnson out and Jordan Clarkson out?
I think we just need to continue the team effort that we built against the Suns. It's going to be a team effort. I know we have Wembanyama back, but I don't think that should take away from still playing with energy from the bench, the role players shooting well, not making mistakes. Um, I know we're playing not the Jazz, who aren't the greatest team in the world, but like you said, they still have Laurie Markkinen, they have Walker Kessler, they have some proven vets on their team. They can drop just as many points on us as the next team. So defensively is where it's going to be a question for me. Who's going to guard Laurie Markkinen? Who's going to guard Colin Sexton? Are we going to be able to slow down all of their shooters? I think last time they just shot crazy on us. I believe Keontae George had a crazy game the last time that we played. We have not beaten the Jazz yet. So we need to come out focused and play well as a unit and not have to depend on the fact that Victor Wembanyama is back, and play with the same energy and focus that we did against Phoenix.
Yeah, and to your point here, lost both of these games so far. This will be the Spurs' last chance to get a win against the Jazz. So, I mean, this is
Mm.
the time to do it. If you're going to get one, you don't want to get swept by the Jazz this year. That's, at this point in the season for the Spurs, you've got to look for the little things. The motivation in this game is, hey, don't get swept in the season
Right.
series and try to get one on them. But lost by 12 in the first game and then lost by 19 in the second. So 2 blowouts for the Jazz so far. But the thing that really stands out to me when I look at this game, Ethan, is Taylor Hendricks and Bryce Sensabaugh, because those may be guys that you forget on the scouting report, because you've got Colin Sexton, you've got Lauri Markkanen, you've got Walker Kessler. There's probably some other guys I'm forgetting as well. Normally Jordan Clarkson would be another one, but he's out tonight. But those guys have really been playing well since they've started giving them minutes. Those are both former first-round picks from this past draft by our former Spur, Will Hardy, who's the head coach of the Jazz. That's the other thing about the Jazz is, Will knows us, and he's going to come up with a good defensive scheme, just like he always did as an assistant here. But with the way that they've been playing as of late, I think those are guys who can be forgotten. And they're also both great shooters who are probably going to be playing off the ball when Lauri's driving inside, doing his thing, or whether that's Colin Sexton or Keontae George. That's another big name that I forgot in this game as well. He's really played well for them this season, has really been on the team all year. The another first round pick that the Jazz had this year, reminiscent of Jeremy Sohan, Malachi Branham, and Blake Wesley. Obviously, these guys are, playing a little bit better to start, at least Keontae George. But there are a lot of similarities there when we bring up our boy Will Hardy. I think he kind of copied us this year in the draft. But the bigger point is Bryce Sensabaugh, Taylor Hendricks, they're going to be guys who are off the ball, and both of them can snipe, and they've been playing well as of late.
Yeah, I remember last time Taylor Hendricks was a really difficult player for us. I think defensively he was able to make Wemby uncomfortable, Jeremy Sohan uncomfortable. I think Jeremy actually had a really bad game last time we played the Jazz. So, yeah, if you could pull that up, because him coming off such a great game, you would hope that wouldn't be the case this go-around. Yeah, 0 for 5, minus 21. I remember.
Rough game for our boy. 2 points, only 2.
And how well did they shoot from 3, the Utah Jazz? 48%. Yeah, we got shot to death, and Taylor Hendricks was a nightmare defensively.
Yeah, I know he was only 1 for 5 in that game, but that's an example of the shots he can get. And I've seen some other games since then where he has been able to connect. And that was, one of his things, even when we were looking at him in our draft profile, Ethan, we really liked his spot up shooting ability when he was at UCF. You see Colin Sexton was distributing in this game, and he got to the line as well. That kind of ties into the point of when he's driving inside, he's going to be able to kick out to shooters. Even John Collins was 3 for 6 from 3 in this game. That's another name I forget. But 5 for 8 from Lauri. But yeah, Bryce Sensabaugh and Taylor Hendricks are guys who've been getting more minutes kind of since the second half of the season has started. But we won't have to deal with Jordan Clarkson this time, who gave us 22 off the bench last time. So with that being said, Ethan, and Chris Dunn being out as well, now Kira Lewis Jr. does have some talent. He's probably who's going to get some minutes. And I wonder if we'll see any Lucas Samanic minutes. Maybe at the end, just like we did before. No, I wonder if Luka will ever get his revenge game against us. But more importantly, with Jordan Clarkson and Chris Dunn out, I think this kind of ties into the point that we were talking about earlier with some of the other games. This is a game where we need Keldon to have a big game, and we really just need the bench in general to play well. We got to take advantage, of 2 of their rotation players being out. Maybe even Blake too, because that's at the Blake and Malachi, because those are both their positions.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen a breakout game offensively from Blake yet. We've just seen him be consistent defensively and not make mistakes. So maybe that's what we see from him tonight, is him actually kind of get his offense rolling.
That would be very nice, but that's definitely a matchup to watch in this one. I'm trying to think if I really have anything else to say. You can see, well, it looks like I think Keldon got hurt in this game, didn't he? Because he only played 4 minutes and didn't take a shot. You're right. This is where he got benched. So yeah, we can't have Keldon get benched again. This is not the game for him to get benched.
Zach had a good game last time though, so let's hope for another good 17-point game from Zach Collins.
This is very solid looking at the box score here. Yeah. Similar to the game that we saw against the Suns on Monday. But the other thing that I saw from the Jazz a little bit earlier, Ethan, is they were on a 5-game losing streak, if I remember correctly.
Let's see.
Where are they?
Just click on the top right, Utah Jazz.
They had like the last 5 for both teams earlier. I don't know where it was. So I'm just going to pull up the schedule right here so y'all can see it. Yeah, so it only showed the last 5. So they're actually on a 6-game losing streak, which could be good or very bad.
Yeah, you never want to be the team that breaks that losing streak.
And you know they're going to be looking at us licking their chops a little bit as the team to break against that. Here we go. This is what I was looking at earlier, right here. But yeah, they've had a lot of blowouts recently too. I wonder if that has to do if they had some other injuries. Oh, Johnny Juzang added to the injury report now, Ethan. That's a big one.
That is a big one. So Blake, this is your game. This is your game, baby. They have no guards off the bench. We need you to go crazy.
Oh my gosh. I think that about sums it up there, Ethan. Any final thoughts on that Jazz game as we're just about to tip off?
Blake Wesley gets 15 points. I'm saying it. It's happening.
We haven't even mentioned Victor.
We know what's going to happen about that more. Victor's going to be Victor.
Well, right. You would think so, because sometimes, there have been a couple games here and there where teams have been defending him better. But seriously, looking at this game, this is one where you'd like to see another, 27, a signature Victor performance, because to have a chance in this game, against the size of this Jazz team, you're going to need him and Devin to go off on top of some help from some other guys as well. But hopefully we can continue this losing streak that they have and kind of catch them on a skid.
This is one of the games that he takes personally, I feel like. Not saying Lauri Markkanen's in the same realm as him, but Lauri's a similar style of player, being 7 feet, puts the ball on the floor. So when he plays guys like that can kind of match his skill set, I feel like he always has a different kind of edge to him.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. And I can't wait to watch. I know we talk about Chet and Wemby a lot, and we're going to see more and more players like this where the matchups are just going to be crazy. But Lauri versus Wemby is going to be another super fun one to watch kind of over the next 5-6 years.
Couldn't agree more.
Victor says in the comments, though, Ethan, he's got his own prediction. Wembanyama going for 26 points, 17 rebounds, 6 blocks, 5 assists, and 5 steals. Spurs win 123-110.
I hope he's a prophet.
I hope so too. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us in this pregame stream today. Tell us your thoughts on the last 3 games, as well as your predictions if you want to get them in last minute here before the game starts in just about 4 minutes for this Jazz game. We appreciate y'all hanging out. Go Spurs, go as always. And if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe below. If you want to stay updated with all of our content, follow us on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. And last, final thing, if you like the hats that you're looking at on the screen and you want to support the channel, go over to our merch site. The link is in the description, as well as the channel description, or you can scan this QR code right here. We appreciate y'all. We'll catch y'all later.